Welcome, everybody, to Real Estate Junkies Coast to Coast. I'm your co host, Rusty Hamm from the West Coast. Steve is on the East Coast. Steve, say hi.
Hey, with my friends today, man. I'm excited, Russell.
Yeah. We have our first guest, Kyle. Kyle is on the West Coast, baby. He's up north. He's in Northern California. Kyle, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Good. Stoked to be here. So especially seeing you guys and good friends, and this is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So just for everyone, just kind of give us a little backdrop of who, where who are you, right? Where are you from? What you've been doing? Kind of your journey into the real estate at the very beginning. It's like, just go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, no, I'm from Northern California. I actually I live in Vacaville, but I grew up in Solano County. Here, I'm basically between San Francisco and Sacramento, and just kind of always lived here. I'm actually a third generation firefighter. I work in the same department my dad worked in. But I worked all over the Bay Area as a fireman there. And but I've been 15 years here with the city of Fairfield, and that's going good. But which I truly love is a passion, and something you grow up in and whatnot. But then also too, right? I'm kind of, I got a 24 plus years in, 30 if you call more 30 if you call my volunteer time. So, it's kind of get to the end of that journey, and I've always been kind of interested in real estate, but didn't know quite how to get into it. And then I originally started kind of looking like in '08 when '08 happened. That's when I kind of started getting more hungry, but still the internet, I mean, it was there, but I just didn't know how to navigate it and break into it. But I knew people that always have. I knew firemen that built their houses and then would rent them out. So I was exposed to people, but I wasn't in their world.
Mhm.
Then COVID hit, right? 2020. We actually moved because it was a great time to move. And I'd been in my house 15 years. So I had all this equity. So I got into my primary residence here, which is, I love it. It's, you talk about manifestation. If you ever want to go down that road, I truly believe I manifested where I live right now.
Yeah, we're gonna get that towards the end there. So go ahead.
Okay, cool. But then I had a bunch of equity, and I had friends in the fire department that were doing rentals, and I saw they were doing well, and they were investing out in Tennessee. They had a property management, the whole nine yards. So what I ended up doing is getting a home equity HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Did I say that right? Or no, cash out refi.
Yep.
I did cash out. I did a cash out refi. Excuse me. I
Yep.
did that, and that gave me that equity. So with their help and their people, I bought a duplex in Nashville, and that was great. That thing's doing great. I really appreciate that one. And then I was like, well, then interest rates starting to change, right? So I was like trying to do another one. So then I got a single family up in Cincinnati. All right, I just recopied my same plan, dove into Cincinnati. Things weren't cash flowing, but at least it got me in the game, right? It got me a second one at the end, and I think my interest rate's like 4 something on that. So, but it's doing okay. I don't cash flow much, but it's a good asset, and I found out like I've had to put some money on it, so it's helped me on my taxes, right? Break stuff off. So I did that, and then I was looking, and then just like interest rates kept going up. And I'm like, and I kept hearing about creative financing, but I didn't know how to get in the game. But I'm listening to all these podcasts. And then one thing with the podcasts, right, they always talk about have your team. Who's your team around you? Be surrounded by good people. And I was like, and I was also thinking about that at the same time, like, how do I build this team? I got a realtor here, I got someone there, but just kind of thinking about your team. And and then through a podcast, I found Chris Prefontaine talking about Wicked Smart and how you do it. And next I was like taking notes. I was like, oh yeah, and going back and listening to that, just trying to get the nuggets.
Yep.
And so from there, I basically reached out to I think I had a call with Zach there, and it was great. And then I was in, it was like it had everything, right? Not only was I learning how to do creative financing, but you had a team, right? You had the support, you had the network, um, and that's huge, right? You need to me, I think you truly need that because else I would quit a long time ago without having that support network. So yeah, and that's how I joined the community and Wicked Smart, and then I also learned how to run a business, right? Because coming from as a firefighter, fireman, right? It's a different world, and that's what I've been doing for my whole life. So to actually learn how to own a business and what things are and different terminology, it's like I went back
Right.
to medic school, right? I had to learn medical side. It's like it's a whole new career shift. So
Wow.
um,
That's so cool, man. Let me ask you this, Kyle, because that's super interesting. So when you finally made the leap and you decided to join the community and start, learning this completely different real estate with this group, and then you had to be forced into the uncomfortable stuff, which was dialing human beings and talking on the phone for the first time. What was going through your head? How long did it take you to start feeling comfortable? Like what did that beginning part of that journey feel like for you? Because I know it's terrifying for most people.
Yeah, and I think it's different for everybody based on your past history, what you came from, what you did in the past, right? So for me, you talk about mindset, cold calling, right? Because that's how we have to go find our leads. And cold calling, I was the way I grew up is like, who are those people, right? They're scammers, this and that. So I just had this internal belief system I had to deal with. And then to get on the phone, and then I remember getting on the phone and having such a sympathetic response in my body. Like I had sweat running down my back. Like my wife would be like, you stink. What are you doing? Like I was been working out, and I just been, and maybe I did like 25 dials and I was exhausted. I was like, oh my God, and it just took time. And honestly, for me, it took so I've been in June, I'll be 2 years in the community. So I'd say it probably took me a good year. And not that I still don't have hesitation. I mean, to be honest, sometimes you look at it's just zeros, right? But you still are high dollar homes and such. Sometimes talking to people or whatnot, but that just comes over time. And I think I've gotten better, and now they're becoming more of conversations with people, and just feeling it out and feeling what's going on. And and we can talk about in the future, but like I was talking to, I'm going in some other real estate directions at the same time, still, because I'm still pursuing the long term route. But right, I was talking to a realtor the other day about an owner finance deal on a 11 unit apartment complex, and just being able to have that dialogue and conversation that came over the last year and a half. I understood the terms that he's like, okay, he wants so much down at 5% for a 5-year term and a balloon on the back end. I was like, okay, this makes sense, and so it's paying off in other ways too, right? What you put into things, you end up getting back. So
100%.
That's awesome, Kyle. And let's transition again. We talked about, Steve and I talked about, the three pillars of, business, owning a business, right? Mindset, skill set, and systems. If you're missing one of those links, you probably won't be very successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's transition from what you just talked about, which is you're getting more comfortable on the phones. So let's talk about the skill set. I remember your first days. You were one of my students at the very beginning. So talk about your transition and your skill set now. You kind of touched upon it with talking to realtors and owner financing, but talk about the early days. You talked about sweating, and then what did you do as far as to get better in your skill set? What kind of techniques did you use, or what were some of the things you did to get better on the phone?
yeah, I'd say the early days. I think it was rough. I would just talk too much. A lot of people talk too much, and it's just saying unnecessary things, right? Because when you talk to like professionals, they're kind of direct to the point, they're confident, and it's just smooth. You could tell they've been there before, right? And so I was just talking too much, different things like that. And I think that's where the skill set has changed, is to just being more precise in what I say, more specific, the actual words, focusing on the actual words I'm saying so I can communicate to them better, right? Because if they don't understand, especially like when we're talking to people who aren't familiar with terms, it's a lot to take in. So the more you can communicate is better. And then for me, getting my conversation shorter, because sometimes it's a numbers game. So you have to reach out to multiple people. But if I'm spending 20 minutes on a conversation, right, it's going to take me forever. So now my conversations, is 6 minutes typically. I mean, I still have conversations that go long. I talked to a guy this morning. He was a broker and all that. And, that was a 12-minute conversation or so, but 12 minutes isn't the norm anymore. That's a long one for me. Usually they're pretty short.
Isn't it interesting though? And I only learned about this from real estate and being talking on the phone and being taught how to communicate. It's all psychology, and until you understand how to communicate with people, how to listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more important to what they hear, not what you say. You know what I mean? Like all these things, it's 100% psychology, right? So in the beginning, you're battling whatever you brought with you and your nerves, right? And one thing you said, which is very interesting because it is so true, it's whatever preconceived notions that you may have when somebody's calling you that you don't know, you're assuming that everybody in the world is receiving your information when you call that way. Who is this guy? What is he, a scammer? Like, right? So it's funny internally what we bring with us to learning how to communicate. And eventually down the road, like someone like yourself, Rusty, and myself, who have done this tens of thousands of times now, how there's such a different cadence and calmness because you feel comfortable in your skin and you've had the worst conversations, right? You've dealt with angry people who were just not nice, right? They didn't matter what you said. It didn't matter if you could help them. They don't want help. But over time, you start realizing where to spend your time, right? You start realizing this person isn't somebody that's ever going to be able to, ever going to be someone I can help. But this person here, maybe it's worth spending that extra 7 minutes, that extra 10 minutes, because I need to just learn a little bit more about it. And then understanding how real estate funnels work and that you can't necessarily work with everyone now, but you can't force people to work on your schedule. You're always working on theirs. So I'm curious, like your first deal that you did, do you remember like the amount of time it was from the first time you called until you got on the contract? What was like the timeline of that?
Yeah. So the first deal I did in creative financing, I think first off, when we have a goal, sometimes you reach that goal, but it doesn't always go how you thought it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one thing within the community, kind of like backtrack a little bit, within the community we work on, which was great, learn how to write business plans and all that, and what's your goals for the year or what you're looking to achieve. And one of my purposes in real estate was, or your whys is to help my family, right? I want to, my parents are getting older and whatnot, and just be able to provide extra care for them. And so my first deal, right, and I'd been calling and talking to people, and then unfortunately my aunt passed away, right? So, and she lived in the home in Alameda, California. So for those of you guys who know Alameda, right, it's a good spot. The homes are pretty valuable there, and it'd been in my family. My grandparents bought it just after World War II and raised my my family in that. And but it was free and clear. It was in a trust. It was trusted over to my dad. And my aunt, great lady, but she was a little bit hoarder, and the things were always fixed, but it was never updated. So it was like 1950s in there. It was great when you walked in the bathrooms. It was cool in that sense, you're right. But we pulled everything out. We pulled the carpets up. We found beautiful hardwood floors underneath, the original hardwood floors, and the whole 9 yards. So in the original condition it was in, I was guessing my parents were, and they didn't know nothing. They're just like, hey, just get it off our hands. I don't want to deal with this, right? They got their own stuff. So maybe 750, I'm guessing, just as is. And then so I approached them and I says, hey, and this was good too, right? Because you have your own self-doubts about yourself. So they didn't even know about my business. I'm running secretly over here because I'm afraid of what someone's going to say or think. And then so I said, hey, by the way, I'm doing this. They knew I had real rentals and such, but I'm doing this over here. And they're like, oh, okay. So number one, it was good for me because I got off my chest. I wasn't hiding this secret, right? I came out of the real estate closet, right? So, so they're like, okay. And then at first they were kind of unsure, and then I addressed their concerns, and then I got Chris on the phone to as like a follow up call, say, hey, these are kind of the concerns, and he kind of talked about them too, and that helped them, right? They're like, okay, cool. Well, if you think you can do it, do it. So I bought it from them on owner financing for $850. So I figured, all right, they made $100,000 off of it, what they probably would got on the market, and then we, like I said, we went through the process, we cleaned it out, and then I got tenant buyers in there who bought it for me for $899,900, right? So, but I made a little spread, and then funny thing about this, right? I'm helping my parents do their taxes. They're like, hey, we need appraisal on that house. So I had a drive-by appraisal done the other day, right? So who knows what it looks like inside, right? But the drive-by appraisal gave it like $1 million. So even our tenant buyers, you know, once they fix it up on the inside, they're going to sell it too. So I forgot. Oh, but anyway, so it gave me a chance. You know, I wasn't envisioning myself helping my parents this way. Yeah, I thought I was going to make money and then I could supplement their income. But this home on the owner financing, and now they're making I'm making principal only payments on it to them on a 5-year term, but the payments are like $1,500 a month. So now my parents' income has increased $1,500 a month to help them out, and then we're spreading it out, right? So it's helping them on their taxes. They're not taking this big lump sum. So
I love it.
So yeah, and then what's cool about the tenant buyers, right? So next door is a fourplex. Well, one of the tenant buyers lives in that fourplex, and his brother was in the city of San Francisco in a little apartment. You know, and they're business owners. They can't get a stated income loan. They run like parking lots and restaurants. And so what he ended up doing is moving his brother. They came together, and then they bought the home on they bought the home. So now you got the two families are together, right? The kids have a yard now, because it's a small yard, but still they got a yard. It's not the concrete jungle. So
that's cool.
It was a win-win-win, right? 3-way win. So
that's great, Kyle, man. So you just kind of transitioned into the game plan without us talking about it, which is awesome. You talked about owner financing. Again, there's typically with owner financing, there's we call them quadrants. Right? There's 4 quadrants. You have your price, you have your monthly payment, you have the length of term, and then sometimes there's a down payment. In this case, it doesn't sound like there was a down payment, but so what you did is you helped your family, what you talked about at the very beginning. That's why you got into this whole thing, right? So you help your family, like, hey, I can pay you this. We're going to agree on a monthly payment so you can get, I guess it'd be like an annuity, right? I guess that's how you would be treating it. You're agreed on a length of term, which is 5 years. So on or before 5 years, you're hoping this tenant buyers get financing, and then that financing will eventually pay off your parents. And then, you're good on that. Obviously there was no down payment. So this is a great deal for everybody, right? You just said it was a win-win-win. You helped 3 families, right? You helped your parents, you helped your family, because this is not free. You're making some money off of this too. And then, like you said, you're helping this tenant buyer who they were, concrete jungle, like you said. Now they're in a single family home. They're able to raise their kids there, which is awesome, right? So very cool. Steve, you have anything to add to kind of the game plan situation?
I just think that and I'm curious what your thoughts are, Kyle, but talking on the phone and learning how to just master being able to take any kind of personality and make somebody feel safe and make them feel trusting in you. That's a complete stranger, even though this deal is obviously with your family. It's still the same thing. Like how can you go ahead, provide some kind of alternate solution that no one's ever heard of before, and be able to make them feel comfortable doing it? And what you did was you took the tax piece, the monthly payment to give your parents income and get that thing off their hands, and be able to do all those 3. It's typically not how a normal real estate deal works, right? So I just think it's really awesome that what real estate has provided me when it comes to communicating is I can communicate with my family, with my children, with my friends, or anybody I spend time with completely differently now, because I think it exposes talking on the phone and cold calling people exposes so many self-doubts and things that you're self-conscious about, just because you are just so exposed when you're on the phone and you're learning scripts. So I'm just curious, just being able to be on the phone now, doing real estate deals, you're building a business, not just doing deals. What kind of confidence has that instilled in you now and just other aspects of your life?
Um, I, I I think the confidence has come over time, and I think part of it's right. I call it seat time or running your calls, right? It's just
Mm.
making dials and talking to people. I used to get offended, and taking it personally. And I've kind of transitioned over time. You kind of you become callous. It's almost like I'm going into the fireman mode, right? I deal with people all the time on the street, and they say things to me and whatnot, and I have that ability to remove myself there. So that started to come over time, and then laugh. Right here you go. I had a guy yesterday, wrong number. He goes, "I got something to sell you." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "These nuts." I was like, "No." We're both laughing on the phone together, right? We're enjoying each other. So, and I think that's the other part is like, you get comfortable talking to people, and then too, like, there's also people I'll talk to older people. They sound older on the phone. They're a little bit more cautious. So I'm like, hey, you got to be comfortable. If you're not going to sleep well at night, then maybe this is not a fit, right? So here's all my information. So you just kind of like cater to people and kind of see what their needs are. If some people are rough with you, I'm able to switch it on and right. I go to street Kyle, right? I bring it right back at you. But
Yep.
then so that's one thing that's come over time. And I think what's helped too is right as you gain the knowledge, you're able to communicate. Before I had no reply, I couldn't say anything, I couldn't come back. And then knowing your scripts, right? It's the same thing, right? When you run medicals, I have scripts for medicals. Based on this complaint, I'm asking you these questions, right? Well, based on your situation in real estate, I'm going to ask you these questions. So once you start developing that, it grows, and you become a lot more confident.
It's
Yeah, very cool. You kind of touched upon it, Kyle, which is you have a reference point now. You have proof of concept. So now when you talk to maybe these, because obviously most homes, I'm generalizing here, but a lot of homes that are free and clear, they're probably a little bit older, right? So you have proof of concept now. You can say, hey, I did this for so and so. This is how it'll work for you. Is that something that you'd be open to doing? And you probably wouldn't have been able to have that conversation prior to this deal that you had.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I use that quite a bit actually of like, hey, I just, whether it be for proof of concept or just in conversation, like, well, I just did a deal in Alameda. They don't know the ins and outs of it. I just kind of leave it at that. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yep. Very cool.
You know, Russell, before you go any further,
Yeah.
I think as we become adults, we forget about the importance of how we utilize people around us. Like look at I'm looking at the screen, I see a woodworker, I see a gym teacher, and I see a firefighter who became successful real estate entrepreneurs, and we knew nothing about it, and it scared the shit out of us at one point in time, right? And now we're sitting here on the phone on the podcast right now talking about it. But what's interesting, right, is specifically in your job, Kyle, you guys run into fires as a team, right? Your boys, you guys, or women too, whoever's on your team, and you guys run into fires together. You would not do that on your own, right?
No,
It's not backdraft. He's not. He's not.
Yeah, cheesy movies. Yeah.
But like it's the same thing with like we say business, but we talk about real estate here. Like there's people out there, right? That a lot of them make the decision to they look at that it's going to cost me some money to have somebody show me what to do, and I could probably figure it out and all that. And what happens to those people who decide to not like join people who are doing things that are already working instead of trying to recreate the wheel? They get beat up. They are super alone, and then they give up. In comparison to people showing you how to do this in a culture, in a community where we're going to share these ups and downs together. We're going to share our wins. We're going to share our learning lessons. And it's so important for the longevity of being able to build something extraordinary, because all three of us didn't want to go and just do a couple of deals. We were trying to build a long-term wealth, successful real estate business that was going to affect our families or affect the next people in line. And I don't know, what do you think, Kyle? If you tried to just do this this stuff on your own? Like, what do you think? I mean, be honest too. If you think you could have, then go for it. But like, what do you think if you tried doing this alone with the creative stuff? Where do you foresee yourself today?
No, the community is huge. I would have quit a long time ago, like you said. I would have quit. It not only is it because it's the support, right? Because people reach out in the community to each other, kind of behind the scenes. I have my people I check in on, see how they're doing. People check in on me. We have our ups and downs, but then also the knowledge you get in the community, the encouragement, and then perspective, just seeing what other people are going through and knowing that they're going through the same thing. You're like, okay, I'm on the right track because I'm going through the same thing as that they're going through, right? And that's huge for me, because not that you want to compare yourself to somebody, because everybody has their own path, but when you see people going out and doing stuff, like I saw you the other day, Rusty. I saw that appointment you went on.
Yeah.
Right. I saw a picture from an appointment that you went on. It's like, oh, cool, Rusty's going out. So and it's also gives me proof of concept. So I'm like, well, if Rusty can do it, I know it can be done. So it just keeps you, and it keeps you engaged. And then too, it's collaboration together. So I had a speaker the other day, and he spoke Chinese. I'm like, all right, well, I don't speak Chinese, but I know my friend Wendy Kaufman does. So I sent the info I reached out to Wendy, and I'm like, hey, you want to reach out to this person, and if it works out, we'll split it 50-50. I'll go do the appointments and all the physical stuff. You and I'll just hand the phone to her and let her talk. And but it obviously didn't work out. But I was like, well, now I have an asset there. Wendy's an asset. So,
I love it.
there's so much in the community. So
That's good, Kyle.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that. So let's do the cool down. So we've done the game plan. We're starting to cool down a little bit. We're gonna stretch our legs out and get some water. And so what's next? So I got a couple of questions for you. I think Steve has a question about you talked about manifesting. You talked about it earlier about manifesting maybe real estate. There's another manifestation that you kind of went through, but before we talk about that, what's next as far as real estate for you?
Yeah. As far as real estate, I'm still still going I'm going with like parallel routes, right? So I'm doing my creative financing here, but I also want to do long-term rentals. So I'm going on down two routes. The long-term rentals, I'm trying to take my skill set from what I learned in creative financing and see if I can apply it to long-term rentals.
There you go.
Because obviously the interest rates are still high, things aren't really cash flowing. So either I get something small and I put more money down to make a cash flow if I have to get a loan that route, or you get something with more units that cash flows more. So
yeah, I was going to ask you, were you thinking of multifamily? Because I think that's something you've talked about in the past as far as doing multi.
So I'm kind of looking at both, and then being out of California, right? I mean, I also look at different states. Not only does my capital go further, but different laws and regulations and things like that, and make it more landlord friendly in that sense. So, and then also, the multifamily, because that's my end goal too. Is that I want to stay in the real estate game. I always see myself being involved, but it's just how involved are you? And especially as you get in your older years, like I'm talking like your 80s and 90s and such. I just want to be secure and set and whatnot. And then too, it frees me up for time for other things. Like, I like volunteer in my time. I help the local mountain bike team, right? I ride with them and coach for them. And then just being involved in my community other ways, and having that capital and such to make the world a place in that sense.
Yeah, very cool. And then talk about the manifesting. You've mentioned it a couple times. I know you're with Dr. Amanda, and she's high into manifesting. We all we've been with Dr. Amanda in her group settings. I think Steve and I both started in 2019 with her. That's when she first started her business. But you sound like you were manifesting before you met her because of these rental properties, right? So talk about what got you into manifesting, so to speak, and then talk about your recent manifestation that you had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So I think we've always been manifesting. We just don't know it, right?
Mhm.
I've been manifesting my whole life, right? I've seen myself as I mean, it's easier because when you're third generation firefighter, right? You just grow up in it. I'm surrounded, I'm living it. So I already see it. I already know what that picture looks like. I know what to emulate, who to become. So, and how to act, and then you once you act that position, you become that position. That's just, so I think that's always come. And then, I mentioned it earlier with my home. Like I've always wanted like a nice home, a good neighborhood, but I always wanted like land. Right, I'm a mountain biker and dirt biker and the whole 9 yards, right? So I always wanted like land to ride on and whatnot. Just this whole 9 yard. And through 2020, we happened to, through a realtor friend, we got this home. It was off market. It was a cop that he's moving to Arizona. He's out, right? And so we got it on market. It's a beautiful home, or excuse me, we got it off market, beautiful home, made the deal work. In like 100 yards from me is open space there's like 30 mountain bike trails right behind me.
Oh wow, that's
And I don't
great.
even have to pay for the land. I just ride it every day. So, that's just, and it has a pool, the yard's fully done. That was nothing I would ever, I always saw, but I saw it like a different way, so.
That that's powerful because I think you're 100% right. I think that we all manifest whether we realize it or not. And what you just said about being raised in a family of firefighters, that just hit me because I was raised in a family of woodworkers of like 70 something years, and it's inevitable, right? And who did I become? The people I looked up to, like my uncles, right? Who taught me how to be woodworkers, and that's why I can build things in my home. And when I first came into being a woodworker, I was just an 18-year-old kid running rampant in the streets, being an absolute lunatic, and never thought I would be good at these things, right? I was just like, it was a job. And then that passion that was instilled in me that I didn't know I had yet, it eventually caught up, right? And then I became this person with these values from these other people who had these values that instilled them in me. I just had to be mature enough to realize it eventually. And then when that finally happened, then I was able to like have my heart match this thing. And that was destined, right? For me, that was destined for you. It's just very powerful. The whole manifesting thing, I was the kind of person who's like, that's some bullshit. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I don't know what you guys are talking about. That's crazy. And then I worked with Dr. Amanda at 19 when I was in the darkest time of my life with this real estate and getting kicked my teeth in every single time I talked to somebody. And I'd never done anything in my life where I worked for 9 months, never made any money. As a matter of fact, I lost money monthly on the expenses to run the business. And instead of me looking at all the things that I was taught and I was progressing, I was looking at feeling like I was getting farther from the finish line. And then I worked with Dr. Amanda, who enlightened me on what I had accomplished and why I visualized money a certain way and why that was holding me back from building a business and things that I learned at a young age and how it's affected me today. Stuff is so important to be in tune with that. And that's where we talk about mindset, skill set, systems. But mindset, as we all know, and everybody on this screen knows, it's the big piece of the pie.
Yep.
It affects everything. It's crazy. So I'm so glad you said that, Kyle, because it is absolutely so powerful. It is real. And you know what? Eventually you'll all have to surrender to that because you'll be on the other side thanking Kyle for saying what he said.
Yeah, and mindset is rarely talked about, but it's probably, like you said, it's the biggest piece, because if you don't have the right mindset, then things
Oh
are going to
yeah.
crumble. So talk about, Kyle, talk about what your recent manifestation,
Yeah.
and then the journey.
Yeah. So growing up, I've always been into I like lowered cars and whatnot, and I've had a couple bugs. I had a mini truck for a while, right, convertible, and so I've always kind of thought that was cool. And I've always wanted a '60s bug, right? I had like '70s, but I always like the '60s style look and all that. So, and I've been thinking about it, and you know, and you guys have, I don't know if you ever heard of Acorns, right? Where it throws all your change and your spare change in. So
Yeah.
I had that going for like a while. I had like 10 G's or whatever in there, just over time, just set and forget, right? So I was like, I started looking at the bugs again, and then I started going online, talking to you, Rusty, because I know you got a ride there, and so but there's not much up here in NorCal. There's some, but SoCal's the hot spot, right? So there's a lot down there.
I mean, there's no bugs up there with all the hippies up in Northern California?
No, they're all buses, right? They're all buses. They're not.
Oh,
They're
okay.
bugs.
All right. All right. All right.
So I was like, oh, and then I was watching this bug. It's been on there. It was like on there for like 15, and then he wasn't getting any hits, and then he lowered it to like 13. And I was like, oh, all right, I could come up with a little bit extra. And I says, and I'm turning like 50 this year, and I swear to God, I'm not having a midlife crisis, right? I'm just living the life, and and Angie's 50. And I go, hey, well, how about we fly down there? It's in San Diego. Let's fly down to San Diego. We'll go pick it up. And I've always wanted to cruise Highway 1 and, and then cruise up and make a little trip. And our plan was hit Santa Barbara and then hit Monterey, right? Boom. Just the whole 9 yards. So, and without going into detail, but I mean, it's a long story. Like Uber didn't show up. So I had to drive my car, got down there in my car, got a taxi, got the bug, checked it out. Everything looked fine. A few little things, but the guy was talking to me all week, right? He had a good heart and such. He was like getting it set for me. 45 minutes out of San Marcos there up the climb, it died. And I pulled off on the side of the freeway. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in San Diego. Right. So it's like then we got it going, and then we stopped, and then now I'm hitting traffic. I didn't want to hit traffic. So I'm cruising like Highway 1 through like Long Beach, Crenshaw Boulevard. And it's been 20 years since I've driven a lower car. Right? I forgot how rough it thing was. So, clutch gas, just get this thing running. 8 hours later, I'm in Santa Barbara. We crash. I'm like, this is not the trip. This is, we're getting there, but it's not what you always plan. Next day we roll out. It starts cutting out, starting problems. Get it towed to the next town. Next thing you know, I got this thing wrenched up. Fuel filter falls off the jack. So now I pick it up, get Angie to stuff the jacks back under. So then we hit San Luis. I was like, let's just pull over. Let's just check this thing out. Go to start it back up. Doesn't even start. I was like, that's it. Get the flatbed. But it's, you get to go, and we're home, right? I got it home. I figured it out. The fuel pump, I found the fuel pump has some like JB Weld on it. So I don't think the guy just really knew mechanics, but like that, I think that was the problem. But anyways, but it's also too, right? I got it home, and then I don't know if you guys are spiritual people, but like it's just your belief, right? If you're doing the right thing, God like takes care of you. Every time you had to pull off the freeway, I was never in a gnarly spot. There was always an open spot. Just things like that, like the tow. I got a tow at 2:00 on a Saturday, and the guy and I had like dirt bike stories in common. We knew certain people. So it just kind of worked out like that. And then here's the other blessing. Like, yeah, this was a pain in the whole, but I got the thing home, Rusty, and I'm like, well, I don't know what this tranny fluid looks like. I don't know what the engine oil is. So I dropped the tranny fluid, and there's only like maybe a quarter of the fluid in the tranny that's supposed to be there. So I was like, oh, this thing's like whining super high. But it was like, hey, you were going to lose a tranny too. You weren't going to make it anyways. So as small as of an issue, a $20 part as a fuel pump is, saved me, what, $6-7 grand on a tranny. I mean, I had to pay for some towing, which is about $1,800, They asked me if I was like, no.
Do you think this happened because you paid for it with 40,000 quarters?
Yeah. That's awesome, Kyle. Great story, man. Keep it up. I'm looking forward to, 'cause you're in the community, and I see you every day, and I see what you're posting, and it's just awesome to see you from day one when you were with me to where you are now. It's just a blessing to see you grow where you've been. Kyle, if people want to get a hold of you, as far as, do you have a website? How could they get a hold of you if they were interested in maybe, connecting with you, either real estate or, whatever, you have a website?
Yeah. So my website's phsbuyshomes.com, right? Professional home solutions. Like the plumbers, Steve, right? The plumbers.
Hey,
we both have the same website name, like plumbers. Yeah.
Same company name, but opposite sides of the world. Professional Home Solutions. We both chose the same exact company. And the reason why Kyle said that was because I was getting phone calls from people in the beginning of my business asking if I could do like plumbing, like 24-hour service, because that's what they thought my business was. Well, let's end in this because this is important. Kyle, I freaking love you, dude, and it's so good to see you. Everybody who starts to jump into real estate, I think, is like they get the allure of the highlight reel of, oh, this is so sexy, this is cool, real estate's going to make me rich. And what do you see? You see people on Instagram who are renting Lamborghinis and are showing like this lifestyle that's crazy, right? But here's the realistic side. The realistic side is if you want to be successful, you have to just have immense amounts of grit, and you have to keep on showing up every single day. What you don't see is Kyle going to a 3 or 4 day real estate event and then being being like in a terminal at an airport calling sellers while he's waiting for his plane to come, like really, really grinding. And always, like, if there is any time at all for me to build my business, I'm going to choose this next 30 minutes that I could just veg out on my phone, or I could get after it. And since I've known you, Kyle, you've always got after it. And I appreciate that, because that's what it takes to be successful. And it's not always the best thing in the world, but the end result always equals the same thing. So I'm super proud of you, man. Thank you for coming on the show with us. I can't wait to see what happens in the next year for you.
Yeah. And I was also going to say too, if people want to get a hold of me, my phone's 707-392-6347. That's my business line. So I'm always open. If you got fire stuff too, right? I mentored a lot of people in the fire department and get in. So yeah.
Very cool. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate you coming on, and we will see you later at the summit.
All right,
Thanks,
y'all.
you guys. Love y'all. Have a great day.
All right, you too.